Now, Hitler was a gambler. He was at the height of his powers in June 1940 when he had conquered France. And then, as you note, he kept going and going, including the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, which led to his demise. Do you think Putin, until now, has been pretty cautious? The Ukraine thing is his first real gamble, isn't it?
It's his first real gamble on that scale. The Georgian War was a gamble on a smaller scale. And Putin did not pay a sufficient price. So his next gamble was on a much bigger scale. And he's not just gambling through the war in Ukraine. He's also engaged in sabotage in Europe. And I don't just mean his old possessions in Europe's Eastern Third. You go to Germany and you ask somebody who knows, and I have, and you will get an answer which will make you stand up. The Germans believe the Russians are engaged in sabotage inside Germany, and they're doing so throughout Europe.
Including Great Britain.
Assassinations, things blowing up, sabotage, stuff in the Baltic Sea. This is ugly business. Putin is assuming that his enemies are as weak and decadent as he thinks they are or would like them to be, and that may be a serious mistake. Democracies usually look worse than they really are. Now, sometimes they are really in pretty bad shape. Okay? France, 1940, fell apart and you had Vichy France. Britain did not. They rallied. The Americans proved to be a lot tougher than Hitler thought. Putin is gambling, and he believes his own talking points.
Which is that the West is weak and decadent.
Exactly, which is a mistake that, well, you wrote about this in your book. It is a mistake that right-wing strongmen have made about liberal democracies for a long time. And sometimes they're right. But more often than not, democracies have a resilience which surprises even themselves. And Putin has managed to alienate Trump, who might have been ideologically more aligned with him. It's certainly a part of MAGA world actually is on Putin's side. There's no mystery. Tucker Carlson goes to Moscow, and he's the right-wing version of the leftists who used to do the pilgrimage and thought that Stalin's Soviet Union was paradise on earth. And we look back and think, oh my God, what were they smoking? What was wrong? What's wrong with these people? How stupid can you get? Well, Tucker Carlson goes and thinks that Moscow's paradise on earth because what? They have a good subway system and they have department stores?
And the grocery stores.
Yeah, the grocery stores? What are you talking about? But this is a kind of subtext of Western and American political thinking. The idea that you project onto some ideologically extreme country your wishes and dreams. And it usually turns out poorly. I mean, you look at the leftists, and it's shocking. The gullibility, the excuse-making, which continued up to the current generation. I mean, Bernie Sanders used to have a soft spot for the Soviet Union.
Right. He spent his honeymoon there.
Yeah. Like, really? But the problem now is on the right. The left has discovered its inner Harry Truman. And the right has, unfortunately, discovered their inner Charles Lindbergh.
However, Trump seems to be, he bombed Iran.
Right.
He is now finally standing up to Putin. So there does seem to be a bit of a conversion going on.
Well, it's Donald Trump. So let's hold conclusions in reserve. But yes, I am relatively positive, and I welcomed the announcements in the Oval Office on July 14th. I see the bright side rather than the many questions. Because, as you say, look where we started from. Look at Trump's opening position. Look where he is now. And
he's praising NATO now.
And not just because he's had a conversion, it's also because Trump can arguably say that he pushed the Europeans to do what they should have done.
And in a way, he is, by demanding that they pay for a portion of these arms that will be sent to Ukraine. He is forcing the Europeans to stand even more behind Ukraine.
Well, he said the Europeans will pay for all of it. Now, we'll see the way it sorts out. If you listen to Mark Rutte in the Oval Office on the 14th, he was talking about a real professional mechanism that NATO would coordinate of European weapons, American money. We'll see about the details. It's important that it gets moving quickly. But this is not just ad hocery. It's not just Trump saying something and there's no follow-through. There seems to be some machinery behind this. We'll see how it works out, right? But this is actually, there appears to be some solid work. And if Trump is finding virtue in what I could call a free world strategy as opposed to a great power, spheres of influence strategy, I'm all in favor.
Now, you talked about Harry Truman. It did take Harry Truman some time to come around to the conviction that he had to move to stop Stalin's encroachments. It wasn't that the Cold War began the second that Harry Truman ascended to office.
Harry Truman had more excuse, not because Stalin's actions were obscure. They were perfectly clear. But the U.S. did not have experience dealing with these kinds of questions, and it took a while for the Washington establishment to understand what was happening. We just didn't get it. And you can say there's no excuse, we should have gotten it, but we were new to world responsibility. There's less excuse now, but your point seems to me to be basically right. When I listened to Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, talking about the Russians, he seems to be following the path trod by many from Harry Hopkins on of thinking if I'm just reasonable, I can make a deal with the Russians.
Joseph E. Davies.
Well, Joseph Davies never learned a goddamn thing. He was Roosevelt's ambassador to the Soviet Union during the purges, and he had no idea what he was talking about. Yeah, he was a businessman.
He thought you could cajole Stalin.
I see where you're going with this. I'd like to give Steve Witkoff the benefit of at least the possibility of a learning curve. Possibly because he tried everything. He was cajoling Putin. He was being Putin's friend. He was going in to see Putin without embassy people, without an embassy translator. Okay. And it still didn't work. Because what he thought, and what Trump probably thought, were gestures of goodwill and confidence, Putin saw as the feckless floppings of an idiot. And Trump doesn't like to be an idiot, right? I'm not part of Trump world, but I have eyes. It may be that Trump is learning, and that his learning curve is not all that alien to the learning curve of other presidents. Look, Bush had to learn about Putin. He had an excuse. We didn't know Putin. Obama had less excuse, but okay, I get it. He comes into office, he thinks that Bush screwed everything up, so he'll do the reset. And he learned. Biden started out with even lower expectations. He wanted a stable and predictable relationship. That's putting the bar on the floor, and we still couldn't manage because, and every president, and now possibly including Trump, has realized Putin's terms for decent relations with the U.S. are simple. We give him a free hand for repression, including murder at home, and the reassembly of the empire. And the Russian Empire, as Putin himself has said, extends as far as where any Russian soldier has trod. That means Finland, the Baltic states, Poland, Moldova. While we're at it, a third of Germany. And if you want to be really extravagant, in 1814, the Russian troops arrived in Paris. No, I don't think Russia really wants to reduce France to a colony, but it does. You listen to the Russian nationalist media, and their animus toward Poland and their contempt for Romania.
Well, they don't think that these are real countries.
They think that they are, especially Poland, is an obstacle to Russia's greatness. And this is not me. Read Putin's article, the statya that he wrote justifying his invasion of Ukraine. It's all about the 17th century. I mean, this is nuts. But, nuts to you and me, but he seems to mean it. And I am hopeful that Trump, in his own way, based on his personal experience, will come to the right conclusions. And then he has to stick with them, and he has to make the decisions announced in the Oval Office real. The weapons have to start flowing. They have to keep flowing. He can't change his mind on this. And the sanctions, strikes me, are not quite ready for prime time, but there is plenty of headroom. There's plenty more we could do to hit the Russian economy. We need to tee them up and push them through. And at that point, there is a reasonable chance of a strategic success in Ukraine, by which I mean not that the Ukrainians will march in and liberate all of their country. Not yet. But Putin may fail to conquer all of Ukraine. You may have a kind of ceasefire line with 80% of Ukraine free, and it becomes what? This century's European version of West Germany. Well, as bad as that was in many ways, it ended up pretty well for everybody. And it was the undoing of the Soviet Union. They tried to keep an empire they couldn't maintain and they couldn't repress. So we'll see. We're not there yet, but better off than a few weeks ago.